Well, thanks everyone for joining me today. I'm delighted to talk to you about our recently launched BEI app. I realize that many of you might not actually have a chance to have used this yet, since we've launched it specifically just within the medicine residency, and then are expanding it just to the surgery residency. And we'll talk a little bit about why we're choosing these sort of phased rollouts a little bit later. But if you haven't done it, no worries. We're going to talk a lot about sort of what the whole system is, what the problem is that we're trying to solve with it, and then how you and your department could get access to it in the future. If you have used it, then awesome. I still think that you're going to learn a little bit about sort of what happens in the back end, what the big problem is that we're trying to solve with it, and how you can get the most out of it with a few quick tips. Like with most technologies, I think that everyone's going to get a lot more out of it if they understand sort of what's the problem that we were trying to solve with this, and then how are we going about doing that. That'll hopefully inform all of us, say like, are we doing a good job with that? Or are there new superpowers that you can detect and help us make, to realize those to help solve these big problems? I will be showing you the app as we're here in a simulated version, and then talking specifically about what people who have the app can do to get the most out of it. So what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve for? Well, the BEI got part of its core mission is to provide access to resources and to opportunities to advance professional development across the hospital, right? We are like many of those in other education departments. Imagine a place where everyone who joins the hospital will get a personalized professional development journey that would help them advance in the skills, in the knowledge, and the resources and the connections that they need to help solve this really important problem that the hospital's taken on, which is to take the best care possible for the patients, the families, and the communities that we serve. Right? It's a hard thing to do, right? But we're really lucky, right? So we're at this amazing hospital, one of the best in the nation, right? Not only does the BEI invest lots and lots of money, time, and resources in thinking about what are the things that we need to grow ourselves as clinicians, as healers, as people contributing and supporting that role. But not only is the BEI doing that, but departments across the hospital and the organizational leaders and administrators themselves are doing it, because it's a core mission of us as a teaching hospital. Not only that, but we're surrounded by these amazing medical schools and research facilities that also provide tremendous resources, people, and events that we can participate, learn, and grow from. And that's part of the problem, right? I was lucky enough to go here to the Brigham as well. I trained in internal medicine. I did global health and social equity. And I remember as a senior resident discovering new resources that I wish I'd learned about on day one. Right? We live in that kind of world. Some of the examples for me were discovering that there was not just access to the 1 or 2 journals that we'd been using, the New England Journal and JAMA, but access to almost every full-text journal easily within this Browsing app that lets me browse them comfortably. Right? In addition, as you know, there were all of these amazing conferences happening across the hospital, and as you progress in your journey, your interests widen, right? So I became much more interested in social determinants of health, and it turns out that there were important conferences happening in other departments as well that I would love to have known about and participated in, but I just wasn't aware of. To tell the truth, this happens to me still now as an attending, and one of the big reasons why I was anxious to participate in this project was to learn about that. All right. So a little while ago at the BEI, we'd realized that we were sharing a lot of the resources in our website, but there were a whole bunch that weren't accessible. And so we set about to go as a team and say, let's make sure we could collect all these treasures which were scattered everywhere, right? And start to put them into a place that could be centralized. And as we did so, we realized that while the website is a lovely place to list things, right? There were lots of other places that things were, right? These maps to treasures, they were everywhere. So we had, not only in our website, we had SharePoint folders and now Dropboxes and now Teams things where useful things were. In addition, we had helpful resources and electronic stethoscopes hiding in cupboards, which should have been accessible to people for these resources. Plus, there were a whole bunch of events and calendars, and these were sometimes in actual calendars we could subscribe to, but worst off, they were often in just plain document lists. And then keeping track of events, not only that you subscribe to, but when the slides were available and others, was most often happening by email blasts, and most people didn't enjoy that. And then there's a ton of like actual hardware systems, right? Places in storage closets, places in shared folders where we think we think they're accessible. We had all these amazing video recordings of lectures that we had. They were on a shared folder, and it was accessible only to our team, not to the people who could benefit the most from it. And that led to this giant morass. We know that that's happening not just in the BEI, but there are tremendous resources that departments are investing in. And it creates this mess of confusion for people. So we're far from that easy, personalized professional development journey. Not only that, but now there's a ton of different ways that people are choosing to access it. And that beautifully designed desktop enterprise app is not so awesome on your phone. So there are a ton of different ways that people are accessing things. And oh yes, there are a few secret codes that you need to access a few of those resources. And by the way, we'd like you to change them every now and then. So things and accessing important things got a lot harder. It felt a little bit like we were trying to sort the sky, right, with no maps. And distill it for people in a way that was going to be easily accessible and shareable. And it really felt like an impossible task, right? I think it's one that almost everybody has tried again and again, and organizations continue to try to solve in the same way. So what did we do about it, right? Well, Eric was very clear. He said, okay, I want you to think outside the box, right? And so a little bit more like trying to return to first principles, we started thinking less about what do we have, but what do we need and what do we want, right? So we thought about it in these three domains. So the first was very clear. We needed to know what we had, right? We didn't need every trainee to have this giant knowledge of like what it is exactly that we had. It would be nice if they had access to that in a database, but we needed to know what we had, right? And we needed to not just know what we had, but we needed to know who we thought it might be most useful for. Because without that, we're just going to be dumping huge amounts of stuff at people, right? Who do we think it's most useful for? Then the stuff is really complicated. The reason why it hasn't been an easily solved problem is because there are lots of different things. So we needed a very flexible system that would let us evolve the information architecture to make it as accessible as possible. Even in just the BEI, we needed a team to do this, to make it happen in a reasonable amount of time. And we knew that we wouldn't just have to do it as a team ourselves, but that we needed it to work with teams across the hospital if this was going to be a truly effective and universal resource. And so it had to be a collaborative tool. And then it had to be easily shareable, because no matter how wonderful the database was that we built, if we were unable to share it effectively, it was going to be useless. And then we also realized that we had to get to know you, right? Who we were going to serve, who we wanted to get the information to in a way that was not a giant, massive dump, something that you had to keep updating, but some way that you could say, tell me a little bit about who you are and what you're interested in. So it had to be a personalized experience, right? A personalized experience, not just in you search for what you got, but that we're with you over time and we're learning to give you more and more useful things to you as you go through the journey. I think the other big thing over just a standard database is that it wasn't just that I needed to know you when you entered. I needed to know you as you evolved in your learning and your development. And then we realized that there are all these other new ways of making things accessible to people. And one of the nicest ways is to do it in a much more intimate space. And that's evolving in terms of, smartphones and personal devices are much more available and accessible. But if people are going to let us into this private space, and a personalized development journey should be sort of a private space. We've got areas where we're going to be open and where we want to expand and learn. If people are going to let us into the private space, we have to base everything we do on trust. And so it has to have strong permission. We have to ask your permission if it's okay. If we're sending you things, there have to be new channels and new ways, and there have to be easy ways for you to opt out of any of the things that we think are important. And the final one was, we knew this is a complex enough space. It's not been easily solved. So we had to use an agile approach. So what does that mean for us? It meant that we have to learn from actual users. We love sitting in a conference room. We've got a very pretty one in the BEI, and we love dreaming big dreams. So we certainly have a big plan, and I'll talk to you about what that is. But we know that in these kinds of complex spaces, things designed in committee rooms often result in very big, pretty, shiny, expensive objects that are not much used by people. And so we wanted to get something out as quickly as possible to actual users so we could learn from it. It also meant that we had to continue to be curious. And we've used that as a part of our process, and using a user experience design process so that we're continually trying to find out more, not just how well received this was, but what is missing and what's there. And then we had to be fearless, and we had to be willing to fail and look at things that are not being used, right? So we've built in a lot of learning into the system. And then we've got some standardized metrics that we look at every month. even if they're telling us that things are not being used or not being used in the way that we thought they were. And then the big thing is to iterate rapidly. Like we're in a large enterprise, but we wanted this to be not on enterprise release cycles, but something much faster and more rapid. So those are the three core domains that we use to tackle the problem. What that's meant, and you'll see it when we show you the app, is that it's really evolved in stages of development. And so what we've released is not the massive be-all and end-all. What we've got is this cute little puppy of an app where we've tried to be as simple as possible, provide something that's hopefully adorable, not this adorable, but something that's useful immediately, right? And then using that, iterate and learn from there. Right now we're in version 1, which is what I'm going to be showing you today. And we've codenamed it as Socrates. And Socrates, we've had to focus, and who we focused on is focusing on clinical learners, the residents within the health system across the departments. For them, we're focusing not on everything, but connecting them with important resources in their departments and in the BEI and important clinical conferences. That's the initial focus for the first part. We've imagined version 2 and version 3, and I'll tell you about them, but the goal is that we're going to let ourselves be directed by what's most useful to the users, right? So I think that's the agile way. Version 2, which is codenamed Plato, is where we're going to start to take the lessons that we have connecting people to resources and these conferences and start to understand what the personalized learning journeys that these residents are going through during their time. And then version 3 that we've imagined as Aristotle is the one where we're going to be broadly disseminating the lessons that we've learned in understanding these personalized professional development journey and then expand it to everyone in the hospital. Okay. Before we go surfing together with the app, I think we're going to take a quick look at the terrain to make sure we find the best BEI app waves for you. And in order to do that, the terrain is the architecture of the whole system. If I share with you the different components, hopefully you'll have some realizations of areas where we could use those powers to further expand what's available to the app for you and your departments. So we've talked about this already. The core thing that we used from outside, from developments in the commercial world was Airtable. And Airtable is this mix of a spreadsheet and a database. It's a spreadsheet in terms of it's got an easy interface for people to enter data into. But it's got the database functionality in terms of it has a much more robust query system inside it. And it has the ability to handle massive, massive data sets for us. So we got together as a team and we collected all the treasures we could find from everywhere that we had access to and integrated into Airtable. Airtable works beautifully with permission structures to allow people to enter into different views. I've used it on a few different projects, including COVID protocols, but we used it specifically there so we could all be entering information and then still be curating it and do some workflow. So we have like some status tags that are related to where the item is in this workflow. And it gives us the ability to invite collaborators too. Then we spend time categorizing the material that we've collected into these multiple dimensions, not just what it is, but who do we think it's most useful for. And then we want to make it available. So we make it available easily through these embedded web views, which just come built into Airtable. You can create these custom views with different filter tags, and then you can embed that in your website. And you get these lovely cards, and then you get search functionality. But we also wanted to make it available in individualized users, in their own phones. To do that, we used their API. Their API is an application programming interface, but it wasn't enough. The API knows about the Airtable system, but it doesn't know about the users. And so we ended up building our own server that knows about the users. It knows you and it knows your preferences, and it collects them over time. It also knows how to talk to Airtable on behalf of the users. It also knows about security. What are the users that should have access to the system and what should they have access to? And then there's an emerging ecosystem of these little robot workers. And they do things on behalf of the users and the system, including sending the emails that do the verification, individualized push notifications. It knows how to read calendars and it can update cards based on that. And then we wrap this all in a nice big security blanket which does a lot of proactive monitoring and making sure that the right people have access to the correct areas. Okay, almost there. So let me show you the app walkthrough. I'm going to dive into showing you the main app screen because there's sort of one core view. But in order to get there, when you download it from the internal app store, you'll register with your Brigham address. That will verify that you're sort of part of the community. You'll get a verification code emailed to you. As soon as you click on that link in your email, then the app will be unlocked. You'll tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're interested in, and then you'll have access to the application itself. Okay, So this is the app view, and what we focused on here was simplicity. The residents are busy enough; they've got lots going on, right? The last thing we wanted to do was another really complicated way for them to enroll. So this is what they get to most of the time. The thing that we focused on was these resources are cards, and they're cards that you can collect in your own private collection. And so what you see up here is your private collection of the cards, and down here is all the resources and all the things, categorized in specific areas, and then also with robust search capabilities. In the intake process, and then later, you can come back and then continue to tell us who you are, not just what your role is, but what areas you're interested in. And as you tell us these different things, then the search and the recommendation curation will improve. For everyone who joins, though, we've worked with the departments to make sure that we could pre-identify what we think is most useful to people. And so here you see this collection. And I'll be going through these in a slide so we can cover what all of the things are that are available. For every department who's launching with us, we start sort of with a basic set that we then help you refine, because there are a whole bunch of cards accessing resources that are hard to do right now. You have to remember what specific sub part of the site something is in, or where to go to get it. And we give you cards that sort of help do those most common ones. But for every card, one of the key features once it's in your collection is that you'll now get updates related to it. So for all of the conferences that the residents have, they get a notification 15 minutes before the conference, where it is, what's being discussed, how to get access to that Zoom link for it, and generally what food is available, which is also a critically important part of it. Once it's in your collection, with these updates, you can then go through and sort of access all these different ones, and then you can remove it from your collection. If you're not interested in it, that's how you do it. If you find something of interest in the other treasures and you want to receive updates on it, then you just add it to your collection, and now it's part of it. And that's the wholeness of it. That's the simplicity of it, right? I'm going to just dive into what's in the core collection so you get a sense of what we're giving people access to. Most importantly is just the conferences. Many of the residents are just installing the app and then forgetting it because they get these conferences sent to them spontaneously. Right now, they have to remember to go to a specific website, or they're just forgetting about it because they're busy rounding. We give them easier access to their scheduling web application. We give them access to completing evaluations and seeing their own evaluations, something that is very hard for many of the residents to find right now, but critically important if we're creating an ecosystem of mutual feedback. The core clinical references and how to access them, clinical calculators, easy access to full text journals just from within the app. So you can click inside it and you can quickly get to the journal that you want and read it on your phone. How to fix things in the hospital, which is another separate app in this other area, but for many people, it's been hard for them to remember, oh yeah, there's this other place I can go to, how do I find that? Using the Bluetooth navigation around the hospital. So we've got Bluetooth beacons around the hospital, and you can access the Bluetooth navigation system for helping you to find rooms in the hospital, how to get to the hospital through different shuttles, and then how to get funding and how to stay connected to the BEI. What treasures are in the Explore section? They're certainly on our website, and you're welcome to do it, but I'll just highlight a few, which is the video learning collection, a huge amount of past and upcoming seminars, including the recordings. We started to crowdsource feedback based on the recordings that we've had, so you get a simplified summary, and if you subscribe to the card for that conference, you would get just a reminder that when that's available. A massive expanding list of library resources and some special series, the MedEd Cafe, the 1-minute teaching tips, and the last page journal club summaries, and then access to a series of mentors. Okay, so how do we recommend people get the most out of the app? The key thing that I'm not saying is for help people to learn about their core collection and then to curate them. By removing them, you give us good signals to say, actually, you thought this was important. This is not important to the residents at this time. But do explore and add other ones to your collection. I think there are a lot of them that are there, and we're going to be adding versions that are not just education-specific, but department-specific. Easy ways to refine your interests with the recommendation changes, because we know that people will develop over time, and we're hoping that their interests will grow and evolve with them. And then easy ways to give us feedback and to make it better. For departments, we'll help you to collect and categorize your treasures. There's a place it can go. It's pretty flexible. There's easy ways for your team to access it. And then as a benefit, you'll get the ability to embed web views in your own sites. We'll help you define a core collection for your users with this existing set and then modify it. We've had experience now doing that for a few different departments. And in general, we're modifying 4 to 5 new resources per department. And then let us help you make your conferences much more easily accessible, not just in lists on websites, but in easily subscribable calendars and then easily subscribable cards that will give people updates when you add additional value to the conference. And then help us grow your community. Let us tell you how easily you were able to predict what was meaningful for your core collection. And if there are other things that your superstars are using that we can then make more widely available. So thanks. It was a quick dive. We know we're at the beginning of a journey, but we're really hoping that we've sort of got the framework in place for a tool that can help simplify this really complicated journey for people and help them navigate so that eventually people will feel that they've got somebody and a tool that helps guide them through this as they grow and evolve. Thanks, everyone.